moving over to the artificial intelligence news yesterday at the White House, the main theme coming out of the first couple days of the Trump administration is this immigration crackdown. But interestingly, he also held an event with some broligarchs announcing a $500 billion worth of an investment into a Texas data center to power AI. Let's roll a little bit of Sam Altman from the White House.
To create hundreds of thousands of jobs, to create a new industry centered here. We wouldn't be able to do this without you, Mr. President, and I'm thrilled that we get to. I think it'll be an exciting project. I think we'll be able to do all of the wonderful things that these guys talked about. But the fact that we get to do this in the United States is, I think, wonderful. So thank you very much.
First, let me talk to you, Sam, about what this means for AI and the future for the U.S. investment here.
This means we can create AI and AGI in the United States of America. Wouldn't have been obvious that this was possible, but I think with a different president, it might not have been possible, but we are thrilled to get to do this, and I think it'll be great for Americans, great for the whole world.
So this has been in the work, you can put up A2 here, this has been in the works for almost a year or so at this point. But what you saw at the White House was these CEOs kind of slobbering over Trump and making sure that he felt like he was getting the credit for this rolling out. And it is the case that the Trump administration is going to be extraordinarily friendly towards AI. I think that's not even in doubt. We can put up C3 here. One of the executive orders that Trump rolled out was called, Unleashing American Energy, and he basically declared that the United States was in an energy crisis. The previous energy crisis that y'all would remember from the 1970s was a crisis of supply. It was when the OPEC countries, cracked down on supply of oil. People had to ration it. It created this American energy crisis. This one is described by Trump in his executive order as a crisis of demand. And the reason he says that it's a crisis of demand is, on the one hand, all of the kind of electricity needs that have been produced by the Biden administration's mandates, around climate change. So he nods to that. But importantly, he says that the AI data centers are going to need just absolutely explosive amounts of American energy. And so that has created a crisis. And so he's going to sweep away a lot of regulations in order to drive down the prices so that you can have these $500 billion data centers. And what I found kind of interesting about the timing here is that on the one hand, Trump is talking about an immigration crackdown, which from the populist right perspective is aimed at protecting American workers. With the other hand, he's doing everything he can to boost AI, which many American workers see as in direct competition with them, as aimed at creating a tech feudalism that is going to basically impoverish huge sectors of the American workforce. Emily, what did you make of this rollout?
Well, I was going to say, it's no wonder he's listening to what Larry Ellison tells him on H-1B visas when he's, working, as we talked about earlier in the show, on this $500 billion investment. And Ryan, you know this, we often see public-private partnerships like this touted at big ceremonies, and then jobs don't materialize. One of the most notable recent examples of this actually comes from the first Trump administration in my home state of Wisconsin with Foxconn. That never panned out to be anywhere near what it was promised in southeastern Wisconsin. And you'll remember they were out there with the shovels, right? It's previous Donald Trump, Paul Ryan, they were shoveling the dirt to break ground. And so these things are not always done deals. That can change pretty significantly, and it can always underwhelm people. It could always end up underwhelming people. But I think the sentiment, if you went to, and you probably remember this too, CPAC in 2014, all of these companies, Google and Facebook, had fancy events, and they had, suites that were had the nicest champagne and, amazing food. And conservatives in the first Trump administration looked back on that as a really gross thing. Like the conservative movement felt badly about itself because all of those oligarchs turned on their cultural values and detested them and looked down on them. And this is, I'm curious, I think it's pretty clearly ushering in a new era, and it's beckoning the conservative movement to open back the doors. I mean, I remember I used to go to all of these meetings with conservative news and Facebook, like Nick Clegg, and a Facebook conference room saying, here's how, we didn't suppress this, we didn't suppress that, tell me what your concerns are. And, it seems like that's just back, like it never went away. And it isn't to say that the religious skepticism towards AI in conservative spaces is so, generative AI, I should say, is so profound that I don't think it's clear yet how this is going to pan out. But if past is prologue, and it usually is, it looks like that moment is just going to fade away, like it never happened, basically.
Yeah, it does feel like we as a public have kind of lost control of this situation here in the United States, and that the only thing that the oligarchs need to do is to kind of lavish, like you said, money at the right places, but also then praise, and in this case on Trump. Larry Ellison of Oracle, who along with SoftBank, which is interesting from an America First perspective, like this is
from an Elon Musk perspective. Isn't Musk in an antitrust suit against OpenAI and Sam Altman?
Oh yes, big time. Yes, they're at war with each other, and also SoftBank, foreign. That's a foreign investment fund. But here's Larry Ellison of Oracle doing the same as Altman, kind of lavishing Trump with praise. This is C5.
Once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again using AI, in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
Oops, sorry, that was a different clip that I expected, but that's fine, because that's actually kind of an even more important one, which is this is what the kind of AI gurus are using to sell the idea of AI as utterly virtuous and making the world a better place. And of course, if they prove to be correct and they could actually do that, wonderful. We'd all love to have a vaccine that prevents us from getting cancer. Cancer's the absolute worst. I'm not sure he was reading the room right there by bringing up mRNA vaccines inside the Trump White House. What'd you make of that?
Or maybe he was, because this is the White House. This is the continuation of the first White House that spearheaded the pioneering mRNA vaccine through Operation Warp Speed, which was itself a public-private partnership. If you can really even call it that, to be honest. It was just all melded together. So if anything, like maybe Larry Ellison is singing from the exact right hymn book. No, I mean, obviously, I think it does highlight what seem to be ideological barriers between, again, the Steve Bannons, the ideological populists, and the libertarian, I should say the quote-unquote America First populists and the libertarian populists, the tech populists, and the sort of middle American populists that now form Trump's coalition. It's a really uncomfortable marriage. And so far, it's sticking together. But when you put all of these billionaires so deeply into your own coalition, your own inner circle, just the feuding between Musk and Altman, I mean, they all have a lot on the line. Like their futures, their freedom, their businesses, that's all on the line, the relationships with Donald Trump. So they have intense scrutiny, or they have intense, incentives to get along with each other and to continue getting along with Donald Trump. But Ryan, it is so fragile among them and then among the broader public, unbelievably fragile.
And this is, of course, is a global competition which China is participating in. And not coincidentally, on Monday, the on Inauguration Day, the Chinese company DeepSeek, which is a competitor of OpenAI, published a peer-reviewed paper that announced that effectively they had been able to produce this AI application that uses much less energy and is much more efficient and is wide open and can be decentralized. And so for people that are just listening to this is just one tweet from a guy pointing out the irony. He says, quote, "We are living in a timeline where a non-US company is keeping the original mission of OpenAI alive, truly open, frontier research that empowers all. It makes no sense. The most entertaining outcome is the most likely," unquote. In other words, OpenAI was started as a nonprofit, intended to be open, obviously, as open is right there in the name, and decentralized and aimed at making the world a better place. It has since been legally and dubiously converted to a for-profit company. That's what Musk's fight with Altman is about. Musk wanted to keep it as a nonprofit. And they are going for a centralized approach where they are going to spend at least $500 billion, on these data centers, and with the idea being that they are going to just build so much computing power that nobody's going to be able to keep up with them. Whereas the Chinese are taking the original OpenAI version and saying that everything's going to be open. It's going to be as cheap as possible. It's going to use as little electricity as possible, and it's going to be available, to basically anybody who wants to use it for a very nominal fee. And that decentralized approach is going to be what allows it to get everywhere. So we'll see who's able to win at that. But at least from the Chinese perspective, they're not. It's interesting. They're not having their policy dictated by oligarchs. Like we are the democracy where we have elections, local elections, we have midterms, we got presidential elections. I have a voter registration card. I can go down to my elementary school and I can cast a ballot. Yet our AI policy is not made by me as a voter. Our AI policy is made by Sam Altman and our oligarchs. In China, nobody there can vote. Yet the Chinese public seems to have much more say over what their AI policy is than we do here. How do we explain that? And how do we understand democracy if we're less democratic?
I mean, I don't know
democratic in the sense that we have control over our government.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with that, but I do think we lose a lot of our credibility. I think there's just more of the marriage between. It's almost like you can't call Chinese business people oligarchs because the distinction between public and private just doesn't really exist. And I think things like this, especially when they're not successful and when they're cronyist, which is, that's what Mark Andreessen is trying to say the Biden administration did with AI, by the way, is that they said it was so dangerous. We need to just let the big guys do it and they need to listen to us. And I think Sam Altman seems to have said, all right, well, if that's the policy then we can, basically stamp out any competition. We can be the best big guy and we can, try to mold the government to our preference. We'll give Donald Trump money for his inauguration. We will be there. We will say nice things. And I bet he'll give us what we want, especially if it makes it look like this is America first, bringing lots of investments in. So, they're playing Donald Trump and they're playing the system. They're playing the game in the way that they have for a really long time. But the point about voter control over AI is really interesting because that is I think probably one of the clearest examples, that and probably some of our defense policy of like the actual definition of oligarchy, which I used to blanch at and criticize Bernie Sanders for using in the United States, but that's oligarchy. That's literally what it is. It's when people have so much money that they can circumvent democratic control and change people's daily lives with the flip of a switch. And that's what's happening in AI. So no doubt about that. I totally agree.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.